Hey everyone, my name is Dillon Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director for GeekVibesNation.com and also a co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast. And welcome to a brand new episode of No Streaming Required, your weekly deep dive into all the latest and greatest in the world of physical media. I am back for another installment of Exploring the Warner Archive. This is the series where I like to not only put a spotlight on the new Warner Archive titles that are coming out, but also delve deeper back into the archive to maybe highlight a title that you missed or I have missed, or just generally remind people that the Warner Archive has been releasing great titles on Blu-ray for over a decade now, and there are so many titles that you do not want to miss out on. So I'm just going to dive right into a new title that I was very excited about. Whenever they announced this, I was thrilled because I love whenever I get a TV show upgrade, and that is DC's The Flash, the complete series from the 90s with John Wesley Shipp as The Flash, who people may remember as Dawson's dad on Dawson's Creek. But first, he was The Flash, and we got all 22 episodes on 6 discs. And this follows the DVD release from about 15 or plus years ago, which I also have here that I originally bought. So you get some nice shelf space saving here. The 90s Flash, it was hot on the tail of the success of the original Tim Burton Batman. And you can really feel his influence even from the pilot episode where you get a lot of Danny Elfman's score and all that going on. But this is a series that I do really like, but I'm a lifelong Flash fan, and he's one of my favorite superheroes. And we've got just recently just had the long-running CW show come to an end, which I did really enjoy off and on. They had some rocky seasons. But the 90s series, it had a real charm to it. It had a really chunky Flash suit that's like all muscle-bound and stuff. And kind of clunky but innovative for the time special effects, which kind of I'll talk about more in the video quality. But it really was just kind of like a villain of the week type episode where the Flash will come into some kind of colorful villain that was up to no good, and he would have to stop him after acquiring his powers in the supersized premiere. If you're a staunch Flash fan who doesn't want to kind of mess with some of the tenets of Flash, you may have some issues with this because there was some special effects limitations, but also some narrative choices that were kind of strange, i.e. Iris West only appearing in the premiere and then just kind of bouncing in favor for another kind of love interest type / co-worker in the lab. And just the way the Flash fights doesn't always utilize his skill set to the best degree, but it is fun. It's very charming. It has just a very simple, like I said, like villain of the week structure that it's 22 episodes of just comic book fun. You have Mark Hamill as the trickster. You have all kinds of other fun guest stars showing up. And it's just a really good, kind of cheesy time. Didn't completely work, but it works in spite of itself. And if you have an affection for it, you're going to want to get this Blu-ray. It has been newly 4K remastered from the original camera negatives, and it is such a jump in quality from the old DVD set. It's astounding, just being them. It's no contest. This is a much, much better video quality. When it's running normally, it is a gorgeous presentation. I didn't see any major compression artifacts or anything like that, just little minor things here and there, but everything looks really good. The only thing I would warn people about is it would appear that the special effects work, which it is limited throughout this series because they didn't have that big of a budget, but the special effects work and like the title sequence seem to be completed on video, so there is a drop in quality whenever the Flash uses his powers, and you can usually tell by the shift in video quality whenever he is about to use his powers. But that is inherent to the show. It is not a problem with the transfer, and it is really the best that these special effects can look. But whenever it's just kind of normal, everyday film, it looks fantastic. Like I said, it's been new 4K remastered, and Warner Archive has done a really great job. Really robust DTS 2.0 sound. The DVD set did not have any special features. This is the same, no special features here, but you just have 22 episodes in fantastic quality. So if you're a fan of this character or comic book series in general, give this a shot. It's very different from the CW one, but it has its own charms, and I'm very glad that Warner Archive gave it an upgrade. There's a lot of these kind of one-season shows that I would love to see Warner Archive tackle. If you're listening, Warner Archive, maybe like Adventures of Briscoe County Jr. or something like that. I would love that. But going further back into the Warner Archive, I believe this was released in 2016. I want to stay on trend for this one. This is another DC property, Constantine, the complete series. This one only lasted 13 episodes, and you have all 13 on 3 discs. This is Matt Ryan's version of him that I believe this aired in 2014. I remember watching it on NBC. It was kind of, I think it was paired with Grimm, and it was kind of, it was fun, but it was also kind of an outlier, and I don't think audiences really knew what to do with a Constantine show at the time, because for those who know, Constantine, there was a Keanu Reeves movie also quite a bit before this as well. He's like a master of the occult. It's like a lot of like the demonology and kind of supernatural presence going on. Also kind of a case of the week type thing with it, which is the case with most superhero shows. And Matt Ryan did a really, really good job in this show, but audiences just did not show up. So it got canceled after 13 episodes. But people who are dedicated DC watchers will know that he would reprise his role as Constantine in DC's Legends of Tomorrow for several seasons. So you got to kind of pick up what kind of started on the original show and get him in the mix with a bunch of other interesting characters on Legends of Tomorrow, and he's a really great addition. But for those who may have never seen this or have only seen him in Legends of Tomorrow, go back and watch this original show, because it is a fun kind of supernatural procedural with like a little bit of comic booky stuff going on. Matt Ryan's great. There's like a constantly building. He's like a little bit haunted by his past and all this stuff, but he has like some interesting people around him, like Harold Perrineau. He's from Lost. But if you're a Constantine fan, I think he represents him pretty well. He also would go on to voice him in some of the animated movies. So Matt Ryan, I think, was kind of made for this role, and his show was fun. So if you have not got around to adding this to your collection, make sure to like go back, revisit this one, pick it up. It looks really good on Blu-ray. It's not been newly remastered or anything, because it was only a couple years after it was released. So it's just a strict HD transfer, encoded very well. It's no compression artifacts or anything like that. DTS 5.1 sound, really robust and powerful sound. You get a few special features, including a brief featurette and 2 Comic-Con related panels. One is an 11-minute dedicated panel to Constantine. One is a 30-minute Comic-Con panel, which is a very small bit of Constantine in a larger CW verse thing. So you have like The Flash and Arrow and all these kind of shows that were airing at the time, talking about their shows, and then you get a little bit of Constantine. So this one's fun. If you're a DC fan and you have not picked it up, it's worth revisiting. Moving away in a completely different direction, but also one of the most anticipated titles in some time. I know people have been requesting this forever. This is Alfred Hitchcock's Mr. and Mrs. Smith. This is one of the few Alfred Hitchcock movies that is not like a thriller, suspense, horror movie. This is a screwball comedy, and you got the great Carole Lombard and Robert Montgomery here as a married couple. And at the beginning of this, they're kind of blissfully in love and like promising never to lie to each other and just gonna be completely honest and blah 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 blah. Then at one moment, the Carole Lombard character asks her husband, "If you could do it over again, knowing how it'd end up, would you marry me again?" And in order to tell the truth, Her husband says, no, I don't think I would. And this kind of creates a little bit of tension. And then on top of that, they are later that day, yeah, plot conveniences. Later that day, they find out that their marriage is not legal due to where they were married in relation to the county line. It's like all kinds of contrivances. So this leads to them kind of their marriage kind of falling apart because they kind of get this do-over, and they kind of each kind of start to realize how much they actually care for each other by being apart. I like it okay as a movie. What I really struggle with is the chemistry between Lombard and Montgomery. I.e., Montgomery's character is a real asshole, and I really have a trouble with wanting him to get back with his wife, because his wife seemingly is trapped by this toxic man who is just like, he does some really shady stuff that I'm just like, girl, go, you do not need him. But Carol Lombard, she is like fantastic. She kind of gets into Carol Lombardi things where she just kind of gets into over her head in certain scenarios, but she's quick-witted, very funny, and it's expertly directed. The only thing I have a problem with is just the core me caring about the relationship, but it's a very funny movie in a lot of interesting situations. There's just some things that really kind of try my patience with the Robert Montgomery character. There's also an array of side characters that are pretty amusing as well. But this is one of the big Hitchcock films that had not been released on Blu-ray. So I know fans will be very excited that this is on Blu-ray, and I want them to know that it looks really, really good. This comes from a 4K restoration of the best preservation elements. Anyone who's kind of followed this title for a long time will know that Warner Archive, whenever they would speak about this, like on their old podcast or anything like that, they would note that the elements for this one were in very, very rough shape, and they kept saying that it would probably be a long time before things would be in good enough shape to be released on Blu-ray. So they have obviously put a great amount of care into preserving this and making it look as good as possible. With that in mind, not working strictly from the original camera negative, using a couple different sources, there are small shots here and there that maybe look a touch soft, or maybe just not as pristine as the rest of the movie. But those segments, you have to give them a little bit of grace of just knowing those elements just did not exist anymore. And they did the best with what they could, and overall it looks fantastic. And I think everyone would be very pleased by how this turned out. I know I was. Great contrast, everything looks good, no compression issues, just a really, really solid transfer. And the sound is great. It's been newly restored sound, DTS 2.0 audio. Split mono channel, sounds great. And then there's also a couple of special features. There's a 16-minute featurette about the movie itself that has some historians and stuff speaking about them and how Hitchcock deviated from his normal genre. And then you also have 2 cartoons, a live-action short film, and 2 radio adaptations of this material. So great release from Warner Archive. They've added a lot of great value, and it's a Hitchcock film that wasn't on Blu-ray that has now been given a beautiful Blu-ray. So it's a reason to rejoice just for that. Another new one that is one of the big stars having a Blu-ray debut, Joan Crawford. Finally, The Shining Hour is being released here. And speaking of Hitchcock, this one really has kind of shades of Rebecca to this one. If you watch the two of them and you agree, let me know. This is Joan Crawford, is kind of like a good time girl. She's like a New York City woman who's just kind of living the party life, but then she decides to settle down with this man. And at the beginning of the movie, the man's brother is coming to kind of investigate because he reads about it in the paper, and they're a very wealthy family. And this all kind of leads to her returning to their family home, where she is greeted kind of coolly. The sister of her husband, she is very kind of standoffish and just very hateful to her a lot of times. The wife of her future brother-in-law, she becomes pretty good friends with, played by Margaret Sullivan, but to a point where she also starts having kind of like a flirtation with the brothers. So that kind of puts things in like a weird perspective, like with a kind of love triangle-y or like square, depending on how many sides you want to connect to it. And it's just kind of like this drama of just Joan Crawford's character wrestling with what she wants out of life, who she wants to be with, and just kind of how it all kind of connects together. Similar to Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I did not really care specifically about her ending up with any particular man because none of them were really amazing to begin with. I really loved her dynamic with Margaret Sullivan. Anytime they were on screen together just speaking, I loved that, and I really responded well to that. And it really has a grand finale that I think is a really nice piece of spectacle that people will enjoy. It's a really dark drama, melodrama, Joan Crawford doing her thing. It's great. The Shining Hours, and this is a recurring theme for a lot of this month's batch, is also a 4K restoration of the best preservation elements, but this largely looks very good. I don't think you would probably be able to notice that this wasn't completely from the original camera negative. Everything holds up very well, maybe small bits of softness here and there, but overall looks very good. No, all the damage has been eradicated. Grain is natural and preserved. Density fluctuation is not a thing. It's just a really good, solid presentation. Maybe just small little things here and there, but overall, very good presentation. Restored audio, sounds great. DTS 2.0, split mono. And then in terms of special features, you get a 23-minute radio promo, which is different from a radio adaptation. This is a promo that I believe MGM would air, detailing some of their upcoming movies, one of which was The Shining Hour, and you get to hear some of the performers speaking about the upcoming movie, which is pretty cool. You also get 3 cartoons, all in HD, looking great and really fun. I believe one is even a high-definition debut. I believe the one with Porky is a high-definition debut. So, The Shining Hour, it's a really good presentation, especially if you're a Joan Crawford fan. You won't want to miss it. Another new one, another Hitchcock connection, because we got a Janet Leigh spotting here. Act of Violence with Van Heflin and Robert Ryan. Robert Ryan is someone I speak about pretty often on No Streamer Required. I've been watching a lot of his movies over the past few years because he is kind of like the perfect kind of dark presence in any movie, and in this one he is kind of the same. He is a man who is kind of out for revenge. He is kind of like a war-battered veteran who is coming back and looking for Van Heflin's character, who has returned as a hero several years prior, but may have a skeleton or two in his closet. And he is looking, Robert Ryan's character is looking to expose that. And Van Heflin has like the ideal life, like he is married to Janet Leigh, who anyone who would be lucky to be, and just kind of has like his nice family that just is potentially going to be shattered upon the arrival of Robert Ryan's character. And there's like this kind of like cat and mouse game of like wondering what exactly is Van Heflin's character hiding, what is his mental state as he kind of starts to spiral when he's being backed into a corner. This movie does a really good job of like really encapsulating the feel of paranoia. It's a really good turn from Van Heflin. And it's also a really, really, I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's a really kind of like a gut punch of an ending as well. That kind of where it all kind of culminates. It works very well. It's a very gripping tale, and it was a really good discovery for me because I had not heard of this prior, even though I do like these characters, but overall it works very well. This is one also 4K restoration from the best preservation elements. Looks very good. No compression issues. Pretty solid throughout. Maybe very, very, very minor things here and there in terms of like a little soft shot here or there. No damage, anything like that. Just Warner Archive doing their thing, making things look great. Restored audio also sounds great. DTS 2.0 split mono. In terms of special features, you get a commentary track, and then you get a 5-minute featurette on kind of the legacy of this, and then you get 2 cartoons in HD, looking great. So Act of Violence is another great addition, kind of like suspense, veering on film noir. If anything about that intrigues you, make sure to check it out. The same could be said for my final new movie from this past June, and that is The Man I Love with Ida Lupino, which I love Ida Lupino in front of the camera, behind the camera, give me it all. In this one, she plays a woman who is kind of homesick for her family, so she decides to go home over the holiday break and returns to her family and kind of gets mixed up in all kinds of madness, where there's like a neighbor across from where her sister lives who's like cheating on her husband. There's like mob ties to her, like that her brother is kind of gotten himself into, and she starts working at this nightclub that kind of has mob ties to it as well, where she kind of does her lounge singery type stuff. It's very dramatic. There's a lot of stuff going on, and it fits together very well because dramatic stakes are constantly escalating, and there's a lot of stuff going on. And I mentioned that she goes home over holiday break. I was not prepared for this to be a Christmas movie, and I was kind of sad that I was watching it outside of the Christmas season. But I know this is one, whenever I'm looking for kind of like a film noir-y Christmas, which there's some great ones out there. Maybe I'll do like a specific video closer to Christmas, spotlighting unexpected Christmas movies. But a good 50 minutes of this movie, of like the hour and a half runtime, is like Christmas up until New Year's Eve. So if you are a Christmas fiend, take note, because that was a fun discovery on my behalf. But this is also another one with like kind of some darkness in the finale, and everything is some good musical numbers from Ida Lupino, which kind of segues into something I was really interested about with this release. This is the first time that the complete movie has been seen, maybe since it originally went to theaters, and because it was re-released later, and it had apparently 6 minutes cut out of it, which those 6 minutes have been restored. And if my information is correct, that is a cut musical number that people have not seen for literally like 70 years. So that is a great reason to pick up this Blu-ray, is just to see this movie intact for like the first time anyone's been able to for just decades. And also, it looks fantastic. This is the only newer release besides The Flash to come from the original camera negative. It looks fantastic. It's a 4K restoration from the original camera negative. It's practically flawless. It's just like pristine, like no damage. Contrast is like solid. It's just a beautiful looking transfer, just nice black and white, just fantastic. Restored audio, and then like I said, the original movie being seen for the first time since it in theaters. In terms of special features, you get 2 restored cartoons looking great. So if you're an Ida Lupino fan, or just kind of like a film noir fan, or just an unexpected Christmas movie fan, The Man I Love is a fun one to check out. I know I did a little bit with Constantine, but now I'm really digging deeper into the Warner Archive. I have some fun ones, including I have a double dose of John Wayne coming up. And both of them are him at sea. The first one is The Sea Chase, which he stars in with Lana Turner, which I personally, between the 2 movies I'm talking about, I think this is the one I would lean towards, but both are pretty solid. The Sea Chase is the more peculiar of the 2 movies, because it is old American John Wayne playing a German ship captain, and this is right at the time of like the kind of Nazi uprising, but he is a German ship captain who opposes Hitler, and at the beginning of the movie I believe he's based out of Australia, and he is kind of wrestling with what he wants to do, but he is approached by an old friend who kind of puts him in touch with Lana Turner, who like his old friend is going to propose to, but things kind of go awry and stuff and escalate quickly, where he is taking a fleet of German citizens back to Germany instead of being interred by the British forces that are like kind of in the area. And there's also a German spy played by Lana Turner that also kind of in the midst of all of this. And throughout this, John Wayne is taking all these German citizens who are not Nazis, I will clarify that, back to Germany to kind of choose what they want their fate to be. And all this time they are being pursued by the British Navy. And at the same time, there's a sadistic person on the ship with John Wayne and his crew that's also kind of doing some sick shit. But it's all kind of this drama of just like learning who John Wayne is, his character is throughout this journey. He is really pushing people to kind of sacrifice in order to get back to Germany, and just which includes like burning their lifeboats for fuel and stuff and all this kind of stuff. It's a pretty interesting movie. It doesn't completely work. Like I said, John Wayne playing German, but if you kind of just toss away that kind of idea of just like, don't expect him to be doing a German accent or anything, it's a pretty interesting character study with just a man who like has all of these things against him, and he's kind of wrestling with what he wants to do. And just like also having kind of like a side burgeoning romance with this woman who is also multifaceted and kind of mysterious in her own way. Overall, it's a pretty interesting ocean tale, and some good action, some good suspense. Like the person that they have in them, who's kind of like the sicko of the crew. There's some really kind of dark things that he does that I kind of was surprised that they went there, but it worked very well, and it doesn't wrap up exactly how you might expect it to. And for that reason alone, I think it's worth checking out. So the Sea Chase, this was an older one. This came from 2017, I believe, and this comes from a 2K scan of the interpositive. Now, even from 2017, being from an interpositive, it still looks very good. It has really nice, pretty good grain structure. Colors are solid. All the damage has been taken away. It's just in more recent years, the Warner Archive has been mostly almost strictly 4K scans of things. So they've kind of refined their process, but even for this time, this disc holds up very well, and I think it would stand solidly next to pretty much any of their modern releases. This is a color film. Colors are very nice. So overall, a pretty solid disc. Even if it may not be up to their standards of the past few years, it still looks very good. In terms of special features, there's only a trailer, so not much in the way of special features, but if you're just a John Wayne fan and you're interested in him being a ship captain, worth checking out just to see kind of his moral wrestling of stuff. If you want to see him as a ship captain, not so much morally wrestling with stuff, you can check out Blood Alley with Lauren Bacall. This is also set around wartime. This is John Wayne playing a man who at the beginning of the movie, he's in prison. And he kind of has this kind of recurring thing that happens throughout the movie where he is talking to this imaginary girlfriend that he calls Baby. And he's just kind of monologuing to her throughout the movie and just kind of forming this emotional connection with someone that isn't there, which I think is an interesting character choice. And I like that John decided to go along with this and not seemingly feel too foolish for this, because he makes you believe that he needs this connection. But the plot of this is he is broken out. He doesn't know why, but once he is broken out of prison, he realizes he is needed to transport these Chinese citizens out of the country, and past all these soldiers and stuff, and only a way that he knows how to navigate. And along the way, he also he brings along this young American played by Lauren Bacall, which they would reteam in one of his final movies, The Shootist, which I think their chemistry is much more believable in The Shootist, which I've talked about whenever Arrow Video released their release earlier this year. But even at this time, I think their dynamic is good, even if I don't find it to be a romantic kind of thing in my mind. It's played for romance for sure, but I didn't really believe it as romance. But as like people who are close to one another, it works okay. Some good action scenes and sequences, thrilling things, and like kind of like them trying to covertly slip by certain forces. Just some seaside shenanigans that's going on. This is John Wayne definitely more in his like noble side. In The Sea Chase, he's kind of morally a little bit dubious at times, even though he's ultimately a good guy. This one, he is kind of more morally upright, even if there are some things that happen that like with the Asian characters that are on the screen aren't always, it's not 100% kosher all the time, but overall, like for this time, you kind of expected. So with those caveats aside, Blood Alley is a pretty decent watch. In terms of the transfer, this came out at the same time as The Sea Chase in 2017, also from a 2K scan of the Inner Positive. This is arguably the worst looking disc of this batch, and it's not terrible. What really hampers this one is the cinematographic process at this time was one that was quickly phased out, but it was used for this movie, and it wasn't the most stable process. And also, this is a movie with a lot of fog and a lot of smoke, so that often leads to kind of like chunky grain and just nothing that is like completely resolved perfectly. But overall, it's a decent looking transfer. It's perfectly solid for HD, but just don't expect like immaculate. It's just one of those transfers where they did the best they could with what they had. And overall, I think it's still a solid transfer. Sound is better than the video at DTS 2.0. In terms of special features, you get a few more than The Sea Chase. You get a 4-minute newsreel that is a pretty interesting addition. And then you get 2 8-minute promos where you have John Wayne on screen talking about his life and then also talking about the movie as well. Overall, it's a pretty fun piece, and it's just like I like kind of like these vintage special features that we just never get to see. Warner Archive manages to dig them up and include them, and I appreciate that. So if you're a John Wayne fan, you got 2 similar movies that are executed differently of him on the sea. So Sea Chase and Blood Alley, both worth checking out if you're a John Wayne fan and you're open to him not being strictly in a Western. Sticking in the war theme, we have one from Samuel Fuller. We have Merrill's Marauders, which is a war tale where we have our kind of ragtag group who, at the beginning of the movie, we have this group who is already on their last leg. They have been fighting the war and have really suffered a lot of losses, and they are finally coming to their end of their tour. Until the powers that be, the leaders, need them to kind of go on this mission that could turn the tide of the war, and it's like very critical that they go on. So it's up for this skeleton crew basically to be sent back out trekking across the country in order to perform this mission. And this is really a tale of endurance and people being pushed past their limits and sacrificing themselves for the greater good. But what does it really mean, and what cost is freedom and all this kind of stuff. It is one of the more, like, it isn't anti-war, but it's a little bit of that, more so than a lot of, it's not a jingoistic messaging like you get with a lot of movies around this time, because this really doesn't sugarcoat that war is hell. And I appreciate that. Jeff Chandler is kind of like their leader, and he puts on like a really good performance of like a captain who really has to present as someone who is kind of like a hard ass and stoic to his troops, and like he even is kind of is viewed as evil a little bit by the people who are following him. but they don't know that he is following orders and how much he fights and for them not to go on this mission. So it's kind of like this interesting look at just like the faces that you have to put on in order to like do your duty, but also whenever you are not on board. There's a lot of good war scenes, but it's also a really tragic tale of just like a lot of these men lose their lives along the way because they are just already so out of it. It's a really tough tale, but it's a really interesting war picture. So Merrill's Marauders, worth checking out if you are a big fan of war pictures. One movie, I wasn't going to talk about this originally, but yesterday my wife wanted to watch this one, and this was perfect timing with recent events. This is the re-release of Cabaret from Bob Fosse. This was not born as a Warner Archive release. This was a Warner Brothers release from, I believe, 2013. So this was originally put out on a digibook by Warner Brothers in 2013, and this was re-released by Warner Archive with different cover art, not a digibook, in 2018. But it technically falls under the Warner Archive auspices, and it has special cover art and stuff, so it's worth talking about. So I was interested to check this one out, especially as I kind of alluded to. Cabaret has been a little bit in the news lately with Eddie Redmayne's kind of crazy performance at the Tonys that had people talking about like how over the top he was and all that stuff. So as never seen Cabaret before, I was really glad to get to check this out, starring Liza Minnelli. So this is kind of a tale also set in wartime where Nazism is starting to just be on the rise in Germany, and at the Kit Kat Club you have just all these performers, including Liza Minnelli's character. There's like an MC character that kind of represents everything that is kind of just frivolous and the most basic human impulses. So this is kind of a musical, but it's a musical in the fact that the songs are mostly contained to the stage at the Kit Kat Club. And really what this is about is just about all these characters who there is like the encroaching shadow of Nazism on the outside, and just like them kind of ignoring it until it gets a little bit too close, and how people kind of can compartmentalize different situations depending on how they need to experience things in order to cope. And this is kind of Bob Fosse at one of his best. There's like impeccably crafted, like really great musical sequences, really great performances. This, I believe, has the distinction of being the most Oscar-winning movie ever and never to have won Best Picture. So it won a ton of Oscars but did not win Best Picture. But it is a really, really great movie. Liza Minnelli is fantastic. And just, it's a really good release that they put out back in 2013 that I'm glad did not stay out of print. This was a really beautiful audiovisual presentation. And this is has a ton of special features, including a commentary track, a couple different docs and interviews and stuff. So if you're a fan of Cabaret, pick it up in some form. If you're a fan of digibooks, maybe seek out that old out-of-print digibook. But you can easily pick this up from Warner Archive, and it's definitely worth checking out if you haven't yet. Going back to one of the earliest Warner Archive releases back in 2015, we have Ladyhawke from Richard Donner. So this has Matthew Broderick, Rutger Hauer, and Michelle Pfeiffer. Little bit about me. My wife and I are currently kind of going through Michelle Pfeiffer's movies this year. That's kind of one of our goals that we were doing. So I was really excited to check out Ladyhawke as part of the Warner Archive. And this is a fantasy film about two lovers played by Michelle Pfeiffer and Rutger Hauer who have been cursed into like when it is daytime, the Michelle Pfeiffer character, she turns into a hawk. while Rutger Hauer remains a human. And when it's nighttime, Rutger Hauer's character turns into a wolf, while Michelle Pfeiffer turns back into a human. So it's like them fated to never be with each other because they have been cursed by this man who had problems with them. And then you had Matthew Broderick's character, who is kind of this thief who's recently escaped from prison, who meets up with them and is trying to help them kind of break this curse, while also kind of starting to develop feelings for Michelle Pfeiffer's character. So it's this fantasy film. Overall, it's a pretty solid film. My only caveat, and it's one that I've had with a lot of things I've talked about this episode, I did not buy the chemistry between Rutger Hauer and Michelle Pfeiffer. Maybe it was the age difference with Rutger Hauer being older. They both do fine in their roles. I just never really cared that much about them getting back with one another. I read that originally Kurt Russell was scheduled to be in the Rutger Hauer role, and I could really see that being a much more intriguing proposition chemistry-wise. But we get Rutger Hauer, and he does a good job. He's just like not someone I think of when I think of just like smoldering romance. But as a fantasy movie, it's fun. It has like some good like sword and sorcery stuff going on, and a really wild soundtrack that's not what you would expect from like a period fantasy film, but it has its own kind of rock and roll flavor that worked for me, may not work for everyone. It's pretty solid. This presentation, Fox had delivered an HD master that they had prepared to Warner Archive. They did not deem it sufficient for the line, so they gave it an additional kind of cleanup through their MPI people on the lot. And they cleaned this up very nicely. And even this being almost a decade old, it holds up very well. The only thing I would mention, which I was a little bit concerned about when I started, is the opening credits are window boxed. So it's black bars all the way around the screen. But other than that, I think that was kind of like a creative choice on behalf of Fox that they respected. But I would have just not. But it's only the opening credits. Everything else looks great. It's a good looking disc. Runs at a high bit rate. The opticals blend well. Nice resolved grain. Soundtrack is good. You get a 5.1 soundtrack. And then in terms of special feature, there's only a trailer. So it's not too much on here. But if you're a fantasy film fan, Ladyhawke, it'll do it. My penultimate title is one from Michael Cimino. This is Year of the Dragon with Mickey Rourke. This is an interesting movie. So Mickey Rourke plays a detective who is going to kind of clean up the triad situation in Chinatown and all the crime that stems from that. All well and good, perfect setup for a movie. But he is also horribly racist and misogynistic, and like he cheats on his wife and like kind of forces himself on another woman, and it's just doing all this shady shit where you're just like, who is the real villain of this? Which might be the whole question of the movie. But Mickey Rourke does his best with this, and like he doesn't do a bad job. His character is just a piece of shit. But overall, in terms of like a police thriller and like clean up the streets type of thing, it works pretty well. There's some thrilling moments. There's some heartbreaking moments. You just won't really feel good walking away from this, which you don't always have to, but just warning you. But overall, it's a pretty well structured movie, and it has the appropriate like engaging points. You just have to know there's some really reprehensible characters in this. And so yeah, overall, this movie, it's been given a 2K scan of the Interpositive. It looks fantastic. Really bold colors, resolves very well. This is an 80s movie, I believe. So, I would like to say it's not too old because I'm not too far away from the 80s. It holds up very well, and just nice grain structure, everything that you expect from Warner Archive. It holds up very well. 5.1 sounds great. Audio commentary track from the director, and then theatrical trailer. So Year of the Dragon. If you like crime films or Mickey Rourke, this one's worth checking out, especially if you don't have like a lot of sensitivities to different things. If you just like old school, like that's coded, old school values, Year of the Dragon, eat it up. Let's go for it. But one that has elements of that, but overall works better for me, is one that I really like that I'm going to finish off with, and that is Bronco Billy from Clint Eastwood is starring in it, and he directs it as well. So Bronco Billy, I would say it's almost a great movie. I may, on a favorable day, call it a great movie. But it's a lot of fun, at least. It is Clint Eastwood is kind of like the star of this Wild West show, and he kind of like goes around with the carnival and his band of people who are kind of devotees to him. He's like kind of saved people from different walks of life. You have Scatman Crothers from the Shining, and a bunch of other different people that he's saved just throughout. And so they are very loyal to him, and they're just always in need of an assistant to kind of assist with his kind of like shooting and kind of death-defying stunts that he does. But he can't seem to keep an assistant. Enter this rich heiress who has recently gotten married in order to kind of keep her inheritance for legal reasons, but her husband, who is also a spineless scuzzbag, he runs off and like kind of leaves her on her own, and she is kind of left with nothing, and she comes across Bronco Billy and his show, and they don't know who she is, but she ends up through ways becoming part of the show and becomes the assistant, and so it becomes like all this like this charming kind of romance / found family film of just like this woman who's kind of always lived this life of privilege while not being very happy, kind of finding herself in the most unexpected places, finding this newfound family, even though sometimes people think she's bad luck because different bad things do happen whenever she is around. But it really is a really nice message of just found family and finding who your people are and what really matters in life. I really love that. And how it's very funny a lot of the times, and just it's a really charming film. The only thing that knocks it down a couple points is just like when Clint Eastwood admits why he was in jail, it just kind of really colors his character a whole different way. It's just kind of like very problematic. And you're just like, what in the hell? You did not have to write it that way. Also, I learned a lot through this movie because I did not know a lot about Clint Eastwood's personal life, but his real life wife Sandra Locke co-stars alongside, and she's lovely. She steals the show for me, and I see that she has starred in a lot of Clint Eastwood movies in the past. She has passed away sometime in the past several years, and they apparently had a very contentious divorce that I learned about, but in this movie they're great together. It's just like that little bit of like script detail about his character that just really kind of just like, what are we doing here? But otherwise, great movie. Really had a lot of fun with it, and I still do really like the movie. And this comes with DTS 2.0 sound. Sounds great. Only a trailer, special features, but this is just a real charming one from Clint Eastwood. It just kind of blends his kind of Western persona, but also having a little bit of fun with it, and just like kind of more towards the lines of like an Every Which Way But Loose type thing. So those are the Warner Archive titles that we are exploring today. We have some great new ones, old ones. I hope there's something that maybe you didn't know about that you're excited to explore. Let me know what you're going to check out. Make sure if you have a friend or a loved one who would like to know about any of these, send this to them, share it around. I appreciate any feedback or shares and stuff. Make sure you're subscribed to the Geek Vibes Nation YouTube channel. I do this every week. It's not always Warner Archive. I do all kinds of different labels. But I will be doing another Warner Archive episode as soon as I can. But until next time, enjoy these movies.
open that door. I know you're in there. Oh, now, this is ridiculous. I saw you downstairs with that old goat. Open that door. I'm not going to stand for this.
There's your pen.
Annie, you open that door.